The trenches of the First World War were a landscape unlike any that soldiers had faced before. Across the muddy scars of France and Belgium, and along the shifting fronts of the East, men lived and died in narrow ditches carved into the earth, separated from their enemies by strips of cratered ground wrapped in barbed wire. In that close and claustrophobic world, the rifle and the machine gun could not always reach the man crouched just beyond a parapet or hidden around the next bend of a trench. Armies discovered, sometimes at terrible cost, that the weapon best suited to this kind of fighting was one of the oldest ideas in warfare reborn in industrial form. The hand grenade, a small charge of explosive thrown by a single soldier into a space he could not otherwise strike. By the time the guns fell silent in November of 1918, the grenade had become an essential tool of the infantry, and the lessons of those years would shape the weapons that followed. Germany emerged from the war defeated, disarmed, and constrained. The Treaty of Versailles placed sharp limits on the size and equipment of its army, and much of the machinery of war was surrendered or destroyed. Yet the men who studied ordnance did not stop thinking about the problems that combat had revealed. Through the 1920s, German designers worked to refine and standardize the tools of the infantry, drawing on the hard experience of trench warfare to produce weapons that were simpler, more reliable, and better suited to the way soldiers actually fought. Among the many questions they returned to was a deceptively basic one. What was the best shape for a hand grenade? The problem was more subtle than it first appeared. A grenade had to be thrown far enough to keep the thrower safe from his own explosive and accurately enough to land where it was needed. It had to be safe to carry in the chaos of the field, unlikely to detonate by accident, yet quick and certain to arm when the moment came. And because armies consumed grenades by the millions, it had to be cheap and simple to manufacture in vast quantities, using materials and methods that ordinary factories could manage. A heavy spherical grenade of the kind many armies had used was awkward to throw with force and precision. Its rounded weight resisted a long, controlled arc, and a soldier's arm could send it only so far. What was needed was a design that let a man throw farther and with more control, without demanding extraordinary strength. The German answer had already taken shape during the war itself, in a form that set it apart from the grenades of most other nations. Rather than a ball, German designers mounted the explosive charge at the end of a wooden handle. This was the stick grenade, and it appeared in a succession of wartime models through 1915, 1916, and 1917, each refining the idea. The principle behind the handle was simple mechanics. A throwing arm acts as a lever, and lengthening that lever by adding a stick allowed a soldier to generate greater speed at the head of the grenade, sending it farther than he could throw a compact ball. The handle also gave the weapon a natural balance in flight, so that it could be aimed with more consistency. These wartime stick grenades proved their worth in the trenches, and they left German ordnance with a concept worth preserving. It was this concept that German designers carried forward and standardized in the years after the war, producing the weapon that would become one of the most recognizable of its kind. Adopted in 1924, it was designated the Steel Hand Grenade 24, the stick hand grenade of that year. It was not a revolutionary invention so much as the mature perfection of an idea that had been evolving for nearly a decade, distilled into a form that was robust, effective, and above all suited to mass production. The name itself was plain and descriptive, and the object it described would go on to be built in numbers almost impossible to comprehend. The construction of the grenade reflected a careful balance of simplicity and function. At its business end sat a cylindrical head made of thin sheet steel, a lightweight metal can that held the explosive charge. Inside was a filling of high explosive, on the order of 170 grams, typically a charge such as TNT or ammonal. This head was fixed to a hollow wooden handle, usually turned from a length of hardwood, which formed the throwing stick and gave the weapon its distinctive silhouette. The wood was light and strong and easy to work, and it could be produced by ordinary woodworking shops without special tooling. The whole assembly was light enough to throw well and sturdy enough to survive rough handling in the field. In the hand, the finished grenade was a substantial but manageable object, weighing something under 600 grams, with a head a few centimeters across, atop a handle long enough to grip firmly. That extra reach translated into real distance. Where a soldier might hurl a compact ball grenade only 15 meters or so, a trained man could throw the stick grenade considerably farther, an advantage that mattered a great deal when the difference of a few meters decided whether the thrower was caught in his own blast. For safety in transport, the explosive heads and their detonators were often kept apart until shortly before use, and the handles bore a stenciled instruction reminding the soldier to insert the detonator before employing the weapon. The grenades were carried into battle in slung bags in wooden crates, or simply tucked through a belt, their handles protruding in the manner that made them so recognizable. The ignition system was where the design showed its cleverness, and it was built around friction rather than a struck percussion cap, of the kind used in many other grenades. Running down through the hollow interior of the wooden handle was a cord, at the end of which hung a small bead, often made of porcelain. The base of the handle was closed by a screw cap. To use the grenade, a soldier first unscrewed that base cap, which released the bead and the cord within. A sharp pull on the cord dragged a roughened element through a friction-sensitive compound, and the heat of that friction ignited a time delay fuse. The fuse then burned for a set interval, commonly cited as roughly 4 to 5 seconds, before setting off a detonator that touched off the main charge. During that brief delay, the soldier completed his throw, and the grenade detonated at or near its target. The system was reliable in cold and wet conditions where other mechanisms might fail, and it did not depend on a spring-loaded lever of the sort found on many rival designs. The nature of the explosion was shaped directly by the grenade's construction. Because the sheet steel head was thin, the weapon acted primarily as a blast or concussion grenade, relying on the shock of its detonation rather than on flying metal fragments to disable an enemy. This made it what soldiers often called an offensive grenade, one that could be thrown while advancing in the open, since its effective radius of blast was smaller than the distance a man could throw it, reducing the danger to the thrower. For situations that called for a wider lethal spread, the design offered a simple addition. A serrated fragmentation sleeve, known as a splittering, could be slipped over the cylindrical head. When the grenade detonated, this sleeve shattered into fragments, transforming the concussion weapon into one that scattered lethal metal over a broader area, better suited to defensive fighting from cover. The grenade's modular character extended further still. Because each head was a self-contained charge on a handle, several heads could be removed from their sticks and wired together around one complete grenade that still bore its handle and igniter. This bundled arrangement, called the geballte Ladung, or concentrated charge, multiplied the explosive power many times over. Such bundles were used for demolition work, for breaching obstacles, and against armored vehicles, where a single grenade's charge would not suffice. It was a resourceful way to create a heavy demolition charge from standard issue components, requiring nothing more than the grenades a soldier already carried and a length of wire. Once the base cap was unscrewed and the cord pulled, there was no way to make the grenade safe again, for the fuse was already burning, and the soldier had only those few seconds to throw before it detonated. Some men counted deliberately before releasing it, so that an enemy would have no time to seize it and hurl it back. A real danger with a delay of several seconds. Few weapons of its size proved so effective in the hand or so widely imitated by other armies in the decades that followed. The steel hand granate 24 became a standard hand grenade of the German infantry, and it was produced in enormous quantities through the years that followed, carried by German soldiers across the many fronts of the Second World War. Its striking shape, A can-topped stick that could be tucked into a belt or a boot made it instantly recognizable, and it earned an enduring nickname from Allied soldiers who faced it. To them, it looked like a kitchen tool, and they called it the potato masher. As the demands of total war strained resources and factories, a simplified version appeared, the Model 43, which streamlined the design and moved the igniter to the top of the head, allowing faster and cheaper manufacture while retaining the essential stick grenade concept. Across the years of its service, the design was turned out in staggering quantities, produced in the tens of millions, and issued to German soldiers on every front, from the deserts of North Africa to the forests of the Eastern Front. Captured examples were readily used by the armies that took them, and the weapon's simple, sturdy construction meant that even improvised or field-repaired grenades could be pressed into service when supply ran short. The legacy of the weapon rests as much in its image as in its record. Few infantry weapons of the 20th century are as immediately identifiable as the German stick grenade, its long wooden handle and blunt metal head forming a silhouette that has come to stand for the foot soldier of that era in countless photographs and memories. What began as a practical answer to the cramped and lethal geometry of trench warfare, refined patiently through wartime models, and standardized in the quiet years of the 1920s, became one of the most iconic hand-thrown weapons ever made. Today, surviving examples rest in museums and private collections around the world, their charges long since removed, their wooden handles worn smooth by time. They endure as artifacts of an age of industrial warfare and as reminders of how a simple idea, a charge of explosive fixed to the end of a stick, could shape the fighting of a generation and leave an imprint that outlasted the armies that carried it.